Here's something you almost surely have not heard about from big media. Americans have cut way back on news consumption. A big survey finds that attention to the news has plummeted. It's a legitimate study. It tracks this stuff every year. I'll tell you about it ahead. And here's a twist. That drop in attention is probably a good thing given the state of the media. Research has found that people who follow the news more closely are more misinformed about a lot of big topics. Today, in the 100th episode of this show, I'm going to give you the big picture. This isn't just about an industry. It's about the role of truth-telling in our society, in our world at this time. It's about people who should be fighting for the truth, who made the choice to take on what is supposed to be that mission, turning their back on it, giving up. Here's what I'll help you understand. It isn't just that people are tuning out the media because they know they can't trust it. It runs deeper than that. This is a cycle. The actions of news giants are pushing people away, and the way that news giants are responding to that shrinking audience is making the problem worse. Instead of working to earn back your trust, they're giving up on you. They're engaging in short-term thinking and desperation. So they're choosing another tactic. That is how we get here to where we are now, a time in which the media is helping anti-democratic forces from the right and left spread their lies. All that's ahead, plus something related. All of a sudden, people in the news are declaring all kinds of so-called derangement syndromes, not just politics, although that too, for politicians on both sides. The term is being used for a type of technology, an entire state, a very popular singer, probably the world's most popular singer. It isn't just a new catch-all phrase. It speaks to something the media is doing, a way of thinking that's spreading across the country and around the world. Also today, messages from listeners, including this.
In a world where disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, and obvious half-truths have become the order of the day, one man emerges from the ashes with his flaming sword of truth.
I so did not hear that coming. Plus, something a bunch of listeners have been asking me for, a brief message that you, can send to people you know who may be deeply entrenched in right or left-wing talking points, inviting them to join this community. It'll be a gentle welcome to them, cracking open the reality of hidden truths. All that and more coming up on They Stand Corrected. Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here. It is so good to have you on this 100th episode of They Stand Corrected, the podcast that fact checks the news. My name is Josh Levs. I spent 20 years in broadcasting, 10 on NPR, 10 on CNN, where I became basically the lead on-air fact checker. And I always saw throughout all that time how the media was getting worse and desperately needs to be fact checked. It's not just our politicians lying to us. It is the media. It happens all the time. At the top of the show, I always like to thank supporters. And today it's something a little different. I invited people to share audio messages for this milestone. I guess I can call it that. When I did that, I didn't realize how beautiful and meaningful so many of these messages would be. So I talked this out with my awesome engineer, Don. And what we're going to be doing is spreading them out across multiple episodes because we want to let them breathe. They offer insight to me and to you about things beyond this show, about what's happening in the broader sense in our society. And these messages help remind me what people need, what they're looking for. The first who were invited to submit their messages were the supporters of the show. I knew when I created it that I needed to launch it myself, not with some company, to be a truly independent voice looking at the media with no bureaucracy pushing the show in any direction. The best way to support the show is to become a paid subscriber to the newsletter. Definitely get the newsletter. It's free. It's filled with links. I don't expect you to take my word for anything. But paid subscribers get additional content and extra perks, and they make this show possible. Some people have chosen to become founding members at the newsletter. One of them submitted this message. This is Karen Lee.
I am a proud member of your founding member group, and I'm also happy to say I've listened to every single episode. I know it's been a labor of love and comes from a place of personal integrity and the ability to educate the rest of us on what journalism should really be about. You've helped me so much become a more discerning person in the way I receive and understand news. And I'm just eternally grateful for the work you've done.
Thank you so much, Karen. And what she said in there about headlines is especially significant. I'm going to come back to that in a bit. One of the things that a lot of people ask me, both when they get in touch and also when I do speeches and events, a lot of people ask me how professional journalists feel about this. So this would be a good time for me to mention that people inside all the big news agencies, I think all of them, have become sources for this show because people are getting so frustrated internally that their bosses won't listen to them. And people like me who have left big media are openly supportive because we know what's wrong and we know this needs to be fixed. When you love something, you can't stand to see it fail. And I love the role of truth-telling in a free democratic society. So I get great messages like this. This is one of my favorite former CNN colleagues, Tanisha Tidwell.
I am so proud of what you're doing with They Stand Corrected. You have stepped out on faith and really have shined the light on what it is to be a truth teller. Journalism is unbiased. It's supposed to provide clarity. It's supposed to drown out the noise and be a public service for people to understand what is truth, what is reality. And you have done that. I enjoy reading and listening to you. So keep doing what you're doing. Pass it on.
Thank you, Tanisha. And there are more messages coming up ahead, including that funny one I teased at the top and one from a very well-known podcast host. But for now, let's do this. I wanted to start off today with the big picture. I often start off with the latest media disasters, but it's time to pull back a little bit. I'm going to explain to you what's happening in the news. There's this image that's been in my head in recent weeks as I look at what the media is doing and how this show is designed to fight back. Picture this. There is a group of people who are coming under attack. They have a little village set up or a little group of homes or whatever it is. To me, that's our democracy. And this group of people are coming under attack from both the East and the West. There are these marauders who want to destroy this community. There are people inside this group who are supposed to be standing up against this, fighting back. They volunteered for this. This is the role that they signed up for. But here's what they're doing. On the East side, some people are fighting back, but most of the people on that side are just standing there playing with their phones or sleeping or welcoming in the marauders and saying, hey, come on in. Meanwhile, on the West, there's literally no one. No one from that group is protecting it from the attackers coming from the West. This image is in my mind because this is what's happening with truth in our society. We have anti-democratic forces on the right and left pushing lies. And the job of journalism is to fight back against that by providing truth. That's the mission. Just as militaries fight physically, the media is supposed to fight for truth. From the right, the East, there are Trump officials who are just allowed to lie, and these people who are supposed to be fact-checking them all too often aren't. But at least there's some. Meanwhile, the big lies coming in from the left, the media is doing nothing about it at all. That's where we are. That's how you get the media quoting Trump's lies about immigrants that make no sense, but at least sometimes they point that out. And simultaneously, the media spreading lies from Iran and ignoring the fact that New York City's Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani made an anti-democratic, unconstitutional threat. They literally don't report that at all. This is where we are. In order to undo it, we have to understand how we got here in the first place. Something kicked in the middle of the last decade. People got smartphones. Now, almost every American adult has one. Suddenly, people could reach each other in entirely new ways. And you know all this. I'm just establishing it so we can look at what happened next. So, the world of competition to reach you, to get your attention, transformed. I've told you before about how the more emotional a headline, the more likely people were to click. The attention economy quickly became the rage economy. Angry headlines and claims can rise above the noise, which gets people clicking. Right-wing news outlets figured that out early on and managed to capture a big part of the audience. The more angry and negative they were about things going on with Democrats or the left, the bigger their audiences got. Mainstream media want audiences, so what did they do? Increasingly, the same thing on the left. There is a study by this place called the Max Planck Institute. It looked at 40 million headlines, and it found that these online news headlines have become more and more negative and focused on clicks, regardless of journalistic quality. So it might be, here's another unbelievably awful thing that Trump did, or as groups infiltrated the media and expanded its pro-Islamist, pro-Iran, anti-Israel stream of thinking, you get more and more angry headlines that speak to that. That's how we got to a point where in this war, for the first time, the media ran with claims from Iran state media if it could make Israel or the Trump administration look terrible. Before anything was investigated, before anything was discovered, the media already ran with it. Amid all this constant stream of negativity comes at you. Well, after a while, people get inured to that and exhausted from it. And they keep seeing what I talk about on this show, that the media gets so many things wrong. So, what do people do? The sensible thing. They tune out. They had enough. And we can see that clearly. Pew Research tracks how closely people follow the news. 10 years ago, so in 2016, just over half, 51% of adults said they follow the news closely. That has plummeted to 36%. That's a huge drop. It's been a while since I've said this on the show, so I'll remind you, don't worry about numbers when I say them. If you want them, they're in the newsletter. In broadcasting, you never expect people to remember numbers. Big picture, it's been a huge drop. It's falling consistently every year. Another recent survey found that more and more people are proudly announcing that they're cutting back on news. There's even a new term for this, JOMO, which stands for joy of missing out. They feel happier when they tune out more. And people who tune out more are often more likely to have a better, more accurate understanding of what's going on in the news. Another study found that when people absorb tons of news, they often understand big issues less well because they're getting so much misleading content. So imagine that you lead a news agency and you see that this is happening. You have two choices. You could decide, let's fix this problem the right way, earn people's trust by doing the job. Let's fortify the ranks on the East and the West. Let's stand up against all the lies. Let's ensure that the people we are here to protect from all those lies swarming at them actually get the truth. That would require big change. It requires rebuilding your outlet from the ground up. It requires training people to know how to fight back against lies, to know how to fact check. Little by little, a news agency that does that could show people that they have a place to go that they can trust. Lots of people who listen to this show would turn to it. But news executives also have another choice. They could give into short-term thinking. So if you're an executive, you could look at this reality and say, well, there's a shrinking group of people who are still following the news closely. Let's compete for them. What do they want? More anger, more extreme claims, more clickbait, more, you're right, the other side is wrong, and here's a reason to hate them even more today than you did yesterday. But so many other groups are competing with you that way. How do you beat them? By getting even more extreme. I'm realizing if there are doctors or psychologists or addiction specialists listening right now, you're probably hearing the similarities to addiction. When people are addicted to something, they often need more and more of it to get that high. Right-wing media have people on the right. The remainder are the people who are radicalized more on the left. So more and more big mainstream outlets are fighting for them. That is what these news agencies have been choosing. That is how we got here. A headline that says Iranians are so happy that their horrible leader has gone. They are celebrating in the streets. That isn't going to make people angrier at groups they already hate. So instead, what do places like the New York Times and CNN and AP and others push? The US and Israel have done yet another horrible thing. Here's a reason to hate them today. Of course, this process ultimately exhausts people and leads them to tune out even more. So they just shrink the news audience by continuing this way. But when you're myopic, when you're only looking at that day's number of clicks, that is what happens. I can tell you, I saw this happening inside CNN when I was there. And whatever headline gets more clicks, that's what we go with. But headlines are reporting, and those extreme, misleading headlines encourage people to believe lies. And that is why it's so important to remember that journalism is supposed to be a mission. Apply this same way of thinking to any other mission, and we can immediately see how crazy it is. Imagine if people are going to a hospital and people at that hospital say, oh, well, look, people have broken arms and broken legs and they're coming in for different reasons. We have found that if we give them cocaine, they come back even sooner. Let's keep doing that. That's not the job. And there's a way that we can see how that has affected the thinking across our society. It involves something that's on the rise in the news, the sudden increase in use of the term derangement syndrome to apply to all kinds of things. Coming up. A big milestone is coming up as this show completes its second full year. It is time-consuming and expensive to get you the truth. I'm up against bazillion-dollar corporate media that spread lies. But I'm so glad I'm doing it. In honor of the birthday, you can become a founding member of They Stand Corrected for a discounted rate right now. In return, you'll get all the benefits of membership, including unlimited access to the best fact-checking content there is, and the keys to accessing big legacy media for free, so you can save money. It's a win-win. Most importantly, you can help make this show possible. Every episode is designed to help us all build new synapses in our minds that guide us to truth and away from the media lies that manipulate us. Is your brain worth $1 a week, maybe? Celebrate with me. Then you can spend the next year knowing that They Stand Corrected reaches you and the world with your help. Check out the link in the show notes or my website, joshlevs.com, and you'll see what to do. It takes less than a minute, but the results last a whole year. Thank you. Listener and supporter Dan Millen sent in this message.
In a world where disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, and obvious half-truths have become the order of the day, one man emerges from the ashes with his flaming sword of truth. Josh Levs of They Stand Corrected. Seriously though, Josh, congratulations on 100 episodes, man. 3 cheers for 100 more and 100 more after that. Keep them coming, baby.
Thank you, Dan. Since this show began, I have had the chance to interview some great people. I don't do a lot of interviews on this show because it's about fact-checking the news, but sometimes someone comes along with a point that they're the best ones to make. And I knew when I launched this show that there were certain guests I wanted to have. One was Leslie Zane, this expert on the subconscious mind, who has coined this term brand connectome. If you haven't heard that episode, I encourage you to go back and check it out. It helps explain the damage that the media does over the long term. It reaches into people's subconscious minds. Leslie wanted me to include this.
Josh, I just want to say you are one of my favorite people. I'm so proud of you for launching this podcast. I think the world of you.
Thank you, Leslie. And another former guest, the awesome Mike Pesca, sent in this message.
Josh has done more than any mortal can possibly have been asked to do, and he's tried to correct them, and yet somehow there's still more material. I find sustenance and necessity in listening to Josh Lev's really issue these corrections, which are media critiques. It's something that I do, but something that he does so well. Keep it up for hundreds of more episodes or until the corrections are no longer needed. So what I'm saying is for hundreds of more episodes.
It's so true. There is a never-ending supply of stuff to check from failed legacy media. Thank you, Pesca. Now let's dig into this. Did you know that the current colloquial term derangement syndrome did not begin with the Trump era? Here was Rachel Maddow back in 2010.
During the George W. Bush administration, conservatives coined the phrase Bush derangement syndrome to describe liberals being so blinded by their hatred of George Bush that they would blame everything on him, no matter how unrelated he was to any particular problem. This is one of those rare times in American politics where the mirror effect actually turns out to be true. Obama derangement syndrome is very much alive and well.
Apparently, the term was coined as Bush derangement syndrome in 2003 by Charles Krauthammer, a conservative columnist. And of course, it's not being used in a clinical way for this stuff. Out of curiosity, I looked at old studies and I found derangement syndrome used clinically in 1954. It could easily stretch back much further. Anyway, this term can make sense in two different ways. For people who can't imagine anything good about something ever, that's the kind of Trump derangement syndrome that people complain about now, like Larry Kudlow on Fox Business. In this clip, he speaks right after former House Speaker Newt Gingrich.
I think there's a desperation on the left to panic.
Yeah.
Whatever Trump does. If Trump went on a picnic, they would panic.
Right.
It's where we are currently in our politics.
I mean, what is it? Yes, it's a culture of negativism and pessimism. And yeah, it's a Trump derangement syndrome.
But Trump derangement syndrome could also apply to people who can't imagine anything being bad about Trump. That's how former Republican Nicole Wallace used this term recently on MS Now.
The person now with TDS, which is what they used to call reporters and liberals, the person with Trump derangement syndrome is Trump.
Meanwhile, former Republican Governor Michael Steele, also on MS Now, actually, said this the other day.
Congressman, both you and Congresswoman Stansbury have been accused of Trump derangement syndrome over the last number of years. But that pales in comparison to Republicans' Clinton derangement syndrome, which is over 35 years old.
It's not just politics. Ed Yardeni, an American-Israeli economist, investor, and researcher, wrote recently that AI optimism has given way to AI derangement syndrome. And news folks had a field day with that. Here's Bloomberg.
I think Ed Yardeni would say you might have, what is it? AI derangement.
100% I do. Absolutely.
Listeners have told me they think much of the mainstream media is getting CBS derangement syndrome. Ever since this new company took over CBS and installed the Free Press founder Barry Weiss as the head of news there, the media is convinced everything is so awful there. I have shown you in previous episodes how that's just not happening. And as this colloquial term goes, there are definitely people with Israel derangement syndrome. In fact, that is probably the world's biggest one. Fox quoted a Democrat pointing this out, the awesome Richie Torres.
Richie Torres says this, reacting to the commencement address, a Democrat. Imagine being so crazed by hatred of Israel as a Jewish state that you make it the subject of your commencement speech at your law school graduation. Yep. Anti-Israel derangement syndrome at work.
All of this connects directly to what I was telling you about earlier. The media overwhelms people with negative headlines about something, and steadily they get to that point, which that's all they can hear, all they process, or all they know about. The media could help tackle this by pointing out people's hypocrisy. All right, here's an example. Last week, I told you how Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is suddenly playing into Israel derangement syndrome, basically. I didn't use that term last week, but that is what he's doing, to try to drum up support from the far left in preparation for pursuing the presidency. You generally need to appeal to extremists in a party in order to win a primary. So, Gavin Newsom is playing into Israel derangement syndrome while simultaneously complaining about another kind of derangement syndrome. Here he was on Jimmy Kimmel.
Sometimes I hear people talking about California and I wonder, like, where are they getting this? Where are they getting this?
Well, Fox derangement. I mean, it's 24/7, the California derangement syndrome. It's through these propaganda networks.
So when it's one he doesn't like, he can complain about it. But when it's one he wants to play into, he pretends it doesn't exist. No one in the media has pointed this out. As I was preparing this episode, I found other examples of derangement syndrome too. The New York Times, of course, allowed someone to call complaints about Harvard derangement syndrome. Rolling Stone had a headline about Taylor Swift derangement syndrome. No one seems to realize that the media is pushing this by overwhelming people with negatives about various things. There is a solution to this. A news agency could start doing a legitimate three-dimensional job in covering anything, the good, bad, and ugly, including in headlines, which is what the vast majority of people see. Combating these various forms of colloquial derangement syndrome is, I guess you could say, one of the goals of this show. I never really thought about it that way before, but the goal is to get people truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So I'm going to give you now a message that you can share with your friends who might be deeply entrenched in right-wing or left-wing media. You can send this to them and say, hey, go to this time code and listen for that brief message. It's for you. They might do that if you say it that way. Here goes. Hi there. I'm Josh Levs. I spent 20 years in big media and did a lot of fact checking, and I'm all about facts, getting you the truth and not asking anyone to take my word for anything. Really good, well-meaning people are being fooled by the media. When you hear that, you might immediately get certain images in your head, like, wait a second, is this guy some far-right figure pushing Trump's view that everything Trump doesn't like is fake? No. Or you might think, wait, is this guy some far-left figure who thinks that everything on the right is evil? None of that. It really is this simple. Things you are told by media giants these days are not accurate. I have reported how the New York Times admitted to me that they leave stuff up that they know is false. How CNN reports things that are false inside what it calls fact checks. There's nothing subjective about it. It really is that bad. And it's fueling hatred across our society. These places are capitalizing on making people angry. That is their new business model. If you have turned away from the news because of that, I don't blame you. If you find yourself going down rabbit holes of extreme negativity in your feeds, I don't blame you for that. That's happening to a lot of people. There is a better way. I invite you to check out They Stand Corrected on any podcast platform and the newsletter that comes along with it. And I tell you how to get in touch with me and tell me if I get anything wrong. We deserve better. You deserve better. A source of truth. Thanks. All right, folks, tell me what you think of that message. Hopefully it'll help you reach people who have been convinced of things that simply are not true. Coming up, a shift in U.S. politics happening right now that the media doesn't seem to recognize. In recent years, Democrats have been calling out Trump for abandoning NATO, saying over and over how important that alliance is. And it is important. It's crucial, including for the protection of democracy. Not that NATO has a perfect history on this stuff. It doesn't. But it is the leading strategic alliance that enshrines protecting democracy in its founding documents. I put links to those documents in the newsletter in case you want to see them. They specifically talk about democracy and democratic values. Now, Democrats are overwhelmingly opposed to the war in Iran, even though NATO's leader made clear that he supports it. Here was NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on the BBC.
Europeans are really stepping up. When you look at the comments by Chancellor Merz yesterday, absolutely supportive of what the Americans are doing, taking out the nuclear and the ballistic capability in Iran, which is a threat to us in Europe, a threat to Israel, to the region. Keir Starmer yesterday committing to this basing request by the Americans. So I think it's really clear that Europe is stepping up, and that's very important.
In those remarks, shortly after this war broke out, he did seem to be downplaying the way that certain European powers were hedging how much support they were willing to give. But he made clear that he sees this military action as a good thing, and he has been calling on European leaders to support it. A bunch of democratic countries do support this military action. In the past, I've told you about Canada and Australia. Not just them, the Baltics and Eastern European nations trying to hold on to democracies have openly supported this war. So, the U.S. political party that previously wanted stronger ties with NATO is staunchly against NATO's position on this. The latest survey shows 44% of Americans support this war, 41% oppose it. That division is overwhelmingly along party lines. That has a lot to do with the media. Because of what's happened in the media, most people only hear part of a story. And the media that they get leads them to take certain positions on these issues. I always want surveys to include knowledge questions. Ask a few basics about the topic you're surveying people on, and ask about their media sources too. That is context. As always, I want to hear from you. There are two great ways to reach me. The best is through the newsletter, and the second is through a form at my website. It gets your message directly to me. I see every one. That is also how you can let me know if you want to send in a voice message. Before I sign off, a big thank you to all of you. Your support, your responses are the reason that I've been able to carry the show this far. With your help, we'll make it through another tumultuous year ahead. Think of this show as being like a shield. So when those liars come rushing in from the east and west, we deflect them together. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week.